With only my flimsy sheep sheet that I regularly woke up shivering beneath, the building was nearly a century old, and the fact that it still functioned at all was a miracle in itself. However, to be honest, I was not thrilled about the transfer. I had made friends here and knew the layout of the land. I did not have to worry about getting jumped or stabbed to death in the showers. As the old adage goes, it is better to deal with the devil you know than the one you do not. I was let out the next evening with all of my worldly possessions, which fit neatly into a clear trash bag with room to spare. I owned some prison clothes, toothpaste, a toothbrush, deodorant, a Bible, a pair of sandals, and a radio. The unbearable lightness of my existence was reflected in that bag as it smacked rhythmically against my leg. "Good luck, friend," Josh called out from his cell as I passed down the bleak concrete hallway. "Take care, man. I hope we meet again on the outside," I said, waving, knowing I would almost certainly never see any of these people again. Hell, I had not even seen my own family in over 5 years. None of them came to visit me anymore. No one wrote me letters, put money in my commissary account, or sent me books to read. Well, we are all born alone, and we all die alone, I thought to myself as the correctional officer walked by my side. He was breathing heavily, as if he had just finished running a marathon. I looked over at his face, noting the burst capillaries on his nose from years of hard drinking and the squint of his little pig-like eyes. Yet, there was a slight gleam of intelligence and sharpness behind that ugly mug. "Well, amigo," Shay said in his slow, plodding way, "I got assigned to go with you. I will be your ride-along buddy. Are you excited or what?" I smiled faintly at him. "There are worse people than you here, Shay," I said. "Far worse." I got on the prison bus in my bright orange jumpsuit. To my surprise, the back was nearly empty. There was only one other prisoner sitting in the rear. Shay sat with us to monitor us. We were also handcuffed and ankle-cuffed, a chain running down and connecting the two. I looked over at the other prisoner, a black man with a shaved head. I thought he had also shaved his eyebrows. I literally did not see a single hair on his head, except for his eyelashes, which he apparently had not yet found a way to shave. "Sup," he said. I nodded. "Sup." We sat there in awkward silence as Shay plopped down hard on the bench between us. The seat groaned like a confused old man. "So, what do you know about this place?" I asked Shay. He sucked down half a bottle of soda and then heaved a deep sigh. "I do not know much about it, to be frank," he admitted sheepishly. "It is apparently brand new, though. They asked us to send a couple of people who met certain criteria." "What does that mean?" the black man asked. Shay gave him a serious look. "Come on, Timmy, you know what I mean. Hardened criminals. People with long records who tour prisons like some people tour French beaches." I scoffed. "There are far worse people than me in prison," I said. "Well, they asked for no murderers or gang members, too. I do not know why, but maybe it is some new government program. They apparently call it an experimental prison." "What about me?" Timmy asked. Shay apparently knew what he meant. "You are not a murderer, Timmy," he said, his lips forming the faintest twitch of a smile. "You never—" "Well, there was that time my girlfriend got me to drop some acid with her. She went and killed her parents. Then we hit the road," Timmy said fondly, his eyes rising as if he were looking at a hovering angel in the far-off distance. "You were never convicted of any accessory charges, so it does not count," Shay retorted. "Oh, it counts," Timmy drawled in his slow, deliberate way. "It counts. Everything in life counts. If I have learned anything in the last 36 years, it is that you can never truly escape anything you have done, good or bad." I could not see much from the prison van. There was a small shatterproof window in the swinging back doors, but it only gave a fleeting view of what was behind us. I noticed the dark forest stretching out to the horizon over rolling hills. We drove for a few hours, the three of us chatting about everything from sports to politics to the recent spate of fatal stabbings at the prison. I felt the van stop. I looked out the back window, seeing more endless trees. I did not see a single house or car on the road we had taken. "This place is a ghost town," I said. Shay nodded. "Yeah, it is as dead as Frank Sinatra around here," he said, wheezing out a high-pitched laugh at his own joke. "This area used to be big for coal mining, but as it dried up and people lost their jobs, they moved away. You know, my grandfather was a coal miner. Good place to build a prison, eh?" Timmy asked. "If there is no one around." We were cut off by a clanging alarm up ahead. I heard something large moving, probably the gate opening. Then we were inside. I saw the guard towers and rolls of razor wire for a brief moment as the van pulled into an open garage. The darkness immediately blanketed us as the garage door slowly rolled shut behind us. Shay jumped up. "Let us get you boys inside so I can take off your handcuffs and everything," he said, motioning for us to follow. He pulled out a flashlight from his belt, guiding us through the pitch-black room. The dim light sent shadows racing across the space like groping tentacles. I caught glimpses of strange objects in the darkness. They looked like medieval torture devices. "What is this place?" I whispered, my voice echoing far too loudly off the cold concrete floor and walls. "Those look like torture devices on that table, Shay. I think those bloody things are thumb screws, and that might be a pair of anguish." I pointed to the pear-shaped object with 3 wicked blades whose points came together, sitting on a dusty shelf. The ornate handle had springs connected to it. The object could be forced into any human orifice, and when the springs were engaged, it would open like a flower inside the person's body, ripping their flesh apart and enlarging that orifice into a bloody, gaping hole. "How do you know so much about this?" Shay asked, giving me a strange look. He narrowed his little pig-like eyes as he continued to fumble with the flashlight, peering around for a door to exit the garage. I looked back at the car and saw the driver just sitting there, his entire body as lifeless and still as a mannequin. "I have read a few books," I said. Timmy interrupted us. "I see a little red light glowing under that door." Shay focused his flashlight on the spot across the room. I noticed what Timmy was pointing at. It was an ancient-looking black door. The wood had started to crack and splinter down the middle. Engraved in silver on the front, it said, "Entrance to North Frost Penitentiary." "Hello!" Shay called toward the door as the 3 of us moved forward, the steel chains giving my steps a clinking rhythm. Shay reached for the antique crystal doorknob. Timmy and I stood next to a dust-covered brazen bull, its bronze mouth wide open as if it was silently roaring at us. As Shay pulled open the door, crimson light flooded into the garage. Tinted black glass covered the back wall. A speaker button sat next to the window. I looked to my right and saw a massive sign sprawled across the wall. It read, "Rules for Personal Conduct at North Frost Penitentiary. The correctional officers without faces do not work here, and we do not know who they are. If you see one, press one of the buttons labeled Emergency Dispatch that are scattered around the complex. When the red emergency lights come on, hide until they shut off. Do not go into the medical ward for any reason. The warden roams the prison every night at 3:33 a.m. looking for human meat. Do not let him catch you." "What is this, a goddamn joke?" Timmy asked, his dark face forming into a scowl. Well." Shay rubbed the back of his neck, looking like an obese little boy who had lost his parents. "I have never been here before, but this is all pretty unusual, I will admit." A buzzing sound came from the back of the room, and suddenly, a garish, echoing intercom turned on. "Please remove their chains and direct them through the door on the left." A female robotic voice spoke calmly, in a tone as cool as lemonade on a hot day. "Your transfer will then be complete." Shay sighed in relief. "Good," he grunted. "This place gives me the creeps." "Bro, you cannot leave us here," Timmy protested. "What the hell is this place? Where is everyone? Why is there a room filled with bloody ancient torture devices next to the garage?" Shay put up his hands. "I am sorry, son, but I have orders. I am just a messenger here. I was told to transfer you here, and that is what I have done." He fumbled around his belt for his key ring, then came over and unlocked the handcuffs and ankle cuffs from both of us. I stretched, rubbing my wrists. I was glad to be out of those suffocating restraints. "Thanks for everything, then," I said, picking up my extremely light garbage bag of possessions and heading for the door on the left. Timmy reluctantly followed behind. A sign on the door read, "To general population." But when we got to the other side and it slammed shut behind us, I found myself standing in a hallway filled with more red emergency lights streaming down. An involuntary shiver ran through my body. I remembered those absurd rules someone had put up. What had it said about red lights? My mind raced for a few moments, then the answer popped into my head. It said to hide. A man shrieked up ahead, his voice riddled with agony and terror. The hallway split to the right and left, but I could not see anyone. Timmy and I stopped. "Dude, screw this," Timmy said, turning and running back toward the door we had come through. He tried pulling it open, but it was firmly locked. The scream came again, louder and closer. But this time, it was cut off suddenly. Then, I heard someone gurgling, like a man with a slit throat trying to breathe. And then, everything went deathly silent again. The gray concrete floor of the hallway had arrows pointing forward on it. There were no doors here. There was nowhere to hide that I could see. Timmy and I reluctantly moved forward. As we reached the intersection, we saw the dead body of a man in a brown khaki uniform. His sightless eyes remained open, staring up at the ceiling, glassy and still filled with horror. Deep gouge marks bit into the flesh of his back, arms, and chest. His throat had been cut, or bitten, open as well. A spreading puddle of blood encircled his body. I saw a dark blur at the end of the hallway on the right. It looked like little more than a shadow. I whispered to Timmy, pointing. We immediately decided to go left. My heart was pounding at this point. I felt like a soldier walking through the no-man's land of a war zone. I expected the attack to come at any moment. The hallway to the left had some doors. I sprinted forward as quietly as I could, with Timmy close by my side. I read the first door. Medical ward. Hell no. I whispered, moving to the second one. I heard light footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw a creature from a nightmare sneaking up on us in the bloody glow of the emergency lights. Its skin was black and shiny, like that of a. The creature resembled a centipede in its general form, yet it reminded me of a hairless werewolf. It towered over us, its eyes like bone-white cataracts, its claws as long and sharp as daggers. And yet, its face seemed almost reptilian. It had two small nostril slits like a snake and a jaw that unhinged and dropped far below its head. I saw rows of blood-soaked fangs. It gave off a low, gurgling growl that emanated from deep within its chest. With a rush of adrenaline and an overwhelming sense of mortal terror, I pushed through the second door without even reading the sign on the front. Timmy was right behind me. I heard him scream as he fell into me. I found myself in a prison dormitory, and we were not alone. As I hit the ground, I saw a pale face peering out at me from behind a bunk bed. The man hiding there saw the abomination behind us and immediately screamed, jumping up and running away. The creature growled and gave chase. In two powerful bounds, it had rushed across the dormitory and grabbed the man by the neck. I looked back at Timmy, seeing him groaning on the ground. Blood poured from deep cuts on his back. I grabbed him, pulling him up. "Let us go. Let us go. No time to." I was cut off by the sound of a neck snapping. I turned, seeing the creature twist the man's head around in a full circle. It then raised the limp body to its massive mouth and severed the head in a single, powerful bite. "Get me out of here, man. Please," Timmy whispered as I dragged him back out into the hallway. I looked over and saw another werewolf-like creature bounding down the corridor, chasing a man in a prison jumpsuit. I had no choice. I pulled Timmy toward the door labeled medical ward. With a creak of rusted hinges, It opened. We rushed inside to hide. "Maybe there is something in here we can use to bandage you up," I said, pulling Timmy down the short hallway toward a room filled with single beds. I did not know why the rules had said to avoid this place. It looked completely empty. Against the back wall, I saw a glass cabinet filled with bandages, rubbing alcohol, band-aids, and various other first aid supplies. I ran toward it. Timmy limped behind me, still groaning. "Goddamn, I think those claws went down to the bone," he said. "It is going to be okay," I assured him as I pulled out some antiseptic and bandages, adding, "It could have been a lot worse." The universe immediately proved me right. I heard a slight giggling from under one of the beds. Timmy and I both froze. Two rotting hands reached out, dragging the mutilated body of a little girl behind them. She had patches of garish black stitches running across her face, hands, and arms. Dark, clotted blood dripped from the stitched-up wounds. She wore a gore-smeared hospital gown, and she had no eyes. I looked into the empty sockets. They stared back at me like two black holes spinning in the void. As she rose, her giggles became full-blown laughter, a hysterical, gurgling sound, like the laugh of a dying person. Then she ran at me. I saw the silver gleam of a scalpel in her little hand. "No!" I screamed, raising my arms to protect myself. The scalpel came down, slicing across my palm. It cut deeply. A cold, burning pain ran up my arm. I repressed the urge to scream. At that moment, the red emergency lights flicked off. Bright fluorescent lights popped on, flickering and strobing in rapid succession. Timmy lunged forward, tackling the undead girl. But I saw more small hands reaching out from under the beds. Hands filled with sores and squirming larvae. I could see the bones of their hands through necrotic patches eaten away by decay. I ran for Timmy, grabbing him and hauling him up. "Time to go. Now!" I screamed, pulling him forward. More undead boys and girls rose up, all clutching sharp knives and surgical instruments in their little, rotting hands. A sudden pain erupted in my leg. Looking down, I saw a knife sticking out of my thigh. The empty eye sockets of a little boy's face stared up at me, grinning like a skull. I collapsed onto the ground as we were surrounded. I prayed to God then, knowing we would die. I prayed that He would forgive me for all of my mistakes because I was on a fast track to the afterlife and would be seeing Him in a few seconds. With a sharp cry of pain, I yanked the knife out of my leg and turned it on my attacker. Then a gunshot rang out. The head of the nearest girl exploded in a shower of bone fragments and dead maggots. I looked up and saw Shay standing at the door, his pistol raised. "Come on," he screamed. "Come on, you idiots. Let us go now." Timmy and I did not need any more encouragement. As Shay continued to blow apart the nearest of the undead abominations, we limped and scrambled toward him. My legs screamed with pain with every step. We got out of the medical ward battered and bruised, but still alive. "Why did you come back, Shay?" I asked through pained breaths. Shay gave me a frantic look. When I got back out to the car, the driver was dead. His throat was ripped out, or something. I do not know. I grabbed his keys and came back for you too. I do not know where we are, but I am getting you out of here, he explained. I looked at him in amazement. I had never thought in a million years that Shay would risk his life to save some scumbag inmates. "So, what is the plan?" Timmy asked, sweating heavily, his eyes wild and pained. "How are we getting out of here without dying?" Shay shrugged. "The door locked behind us when we came in," I said. "Unless we can break it down and get back to the car." We passed by buttons labeled emergency dispatch under glowing red emergency signs. I wondered if we could get help somehow through them. "Halt!" someone cried from behind us. I looked back, seeing a man in a black correctional officer's uniform. He ran toward us, his hand on the radio hanging from his belt. But something immediately seemed wrong about the figure. As he got closer, I realized why. He had no face. His entire head was just smooth white skin, without hair, without a mouth, without eyes, without a nose. He spoke again, and the voice seemed to come from all around his body. "You must report to the medical ward," the strange figure said. "We do not allow injured people in the hallways." "No, we are fine," Shay said, grinning. "See, buddy? I work for the doc too." He pointed at the identification badge clipped to his belt. Clipped to his breast pocket, the figure raised his radio to his lips. "We have resistance near Dormitory 1, the fake correctional officer said into his radio. Before any of us could stop him, Shay ran forward, knocking the radio from his hand. The officer instantly straightened up and whipped out his pistol, pointing it at Shay's torso. He fired. I saw Shay's chest explode in a blossoming flower of blood. "No! Damn it!" Timmy shouted, running forward. I saw a silver gleam in his hand and realized he had taken one of the scalpels from the undead Shay had killed in the medical ward. As the fake officer spun to point the pistol at Timmy, Timmy rammed into him, stabbing the scalpel deeply into the officer's neck. They fell together, with Timmy on top of the faceless officer, his body weight driving the scalpel even deeper into the white, featureless skin. Black blood, the color of soot, spurted from the wound. The officer's gun went off, the bullet missing Timmy entirely and smashing into the ceiling. The officer's gurgling death gasps seemed to come from all around his body. I grabbed Timmy. "Get the guns," I said. "They are both dead. We need the guns." He nodded, grabbing the officer's pistol and taking an extra magazine from his belt. I did the same with Shay's gun and ammunition. I pressed the button labeled Emergency Dispatch just as more faceless men appeared at the far end of the corridor. Then we ran. It was not very fast, both of us were injured, bleeding, and exhausted, but at that point, I was just grateful to be alive. We wandered through the prison, avoiding the faceless officers whenever we saw them patrolling the hallways. They would radio to each other, their eerie, disembodied voices coming from around their bodies rather than from their heads. It was unnatural and deeply unsettling. A few times, I saw men in black SWAT suits with automatic rifles gunning down the fake correctional officers. I wondered if that was the emergency dispatch response. Timmy and I avoided them as well. We gave a wide berth anytime we heard gunfire. We passed cells with mummified corpses hanging from the ceiling. We passed dormitories littered with the rotting remains of prisoners, victims of the strange werewolf-like creatures that prowled the complex. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of another survivor, a pale face peeking out from some dark hiding spot, but Timmy and I kept moving, searching desperately for a way out. We were in a sprawling gymnasium, sitting down to rest for a few minutes, when we encountered the warden. A demonic roar echoed from the hallway outside, a mixture of many strange, inhuman tongues. Timmy and I sat up quickly. A decapitated body flew through the gymnasium doors and smacked against the concrete wall with a wet, sickening thud. And then he stepped inside. The warden stood 10 feet tall. He wore a black correctional officer's uniform and a leather visor cap. His face looked like it had no flesh, a thick layer of exposed bone covered it, with 2 reptilian eyes peering out from behind slitted pupils. He hissed, a forked tongue flicking out from his gaping maw. His fingers were jagged, like razor-sharp daggers of bone. The smell of old leather and blood radiated from his body. "Shoot it!" I screamed, raising my pistol and firing at its head. The first shot blew off its visor cap, revealing the hairless reptilian skull beneath. But the bullet only gouged the top of its skull. It charged. It moved with terrifying speed, bounding toward us in powerful, loping strides. Timmy and I fired as fast as we could. It got within a few feet before launching itself into Timmy like a freight train hitting a parked car. Timmy's body went flying, smashing into the back wall with a sickening crunch. The sound of shattering bones echoed in the vast gymnasium. I slammed another magazine into my pistol as the warden turned toward me. Blood poured from its skull. One of its eyes had exploded in a shower of gore and vitreous fluid, but it was still alive, still moving. I raised my gun, aiming for the ruined eye. I fired. The warden clutched its head as if suddenly remembering something important. Then it collapsed. I ran forward, pressing the pistol point-blank against its ruined eye socket, and emptied the clip. By the time I was finished, it was not moving anymore. I let out a shaky breath, then turned to Timmy. He lay crumpled on the ground. His legs were shattered. His spine was bent at an unnatural angle. His ribs were broken. I could see the fragments pressing beneath his skin. He coughed up blood. "I am sorry, Timmy," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "I really am." His head tilted slightly, his lips parting as if he were about to say something. Then he exhaled one final, ragged breath, and fell still. I swallowed hard, wiping blood from my face. Then I saw something. A ring of keys dangled from the warden's belt. Excitement flooded my chest. I ran downstairs and tried one of the locked doors. It worked. I sprinted outside to the van, dragging the dead driver out of the seat. With shaking hands, I started the engine. I slammed my foot on the gas. The van smashed through the garage door in an explosion of metal and dust. Then I hit the main gate, blasting through the fence in a screech of tearing steel. It did catastrophic damage to the prison van, but it got me far enough away before the engine finally gave out. I stumbled out onto the road, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I did not know what kind of prison that was. But I knew one thing. I never wanted to see that hellscape again.